Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Legal Helm, where we navigate the currents of legal innovation and leadership. I'm your host, Bim Dave. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Milan Bobde, the CEO and co-founder of Oddr, the legal industry's first true revenue intelligence platform. With nearly 2 decades of experience helping law firms modernize financial and operational systems, Milan is recognized as an innovator in legal technology. Before launching Oddr, he led product and growth strategy for some of the industry's most successful platforms. At Oddr, Milan is redefining how law firms manage billing, collections, payments, and forecasting, helping them turn revenue operations into competitive advantage. Milan, hello, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to be, firstly, having you on the show. And obviously, you and I go way back from our old Elite days. So it's really good to have a friend on the show. So really good for you to be here. So for those in our audience that don't know about you, it'll be great for you to just tell us a little bit about the journey that first led you to legal technology in the first place.
Well, yeah, it was a very interesting one. So this was somewhere around mid-2000s, and I did join Elite as a software engineer. And this was my early days, back in mid-2000s, as I mentioned. One of my very good friend, he was actually in my master's at USC. He joined Elite and he asked me, hey, Elite is hiring. And they are a great company to work for. So he pulled me into Elite, and that was my first job in the legal tech. So who knew 20 years later I'll be doing something in legal tech? But as we know, then legal is a very small and very exciting space to bring innovation to. But yeah, that was my first entrance to the legal as a software engineer.
Excellent. No, that's good. Good to hear. And what were you doing before that, out of interest?
Yeah, I was in a small kind of a startup-ish consulting company. This is back in LA. So I was I started my journey as a software engineer. So I did my undergrad and my master's in computer science. So mainly software engineering for a small companies. And then Elite was the first one. I did do my MBA and moved into the product and business shortly once I joined Elite. But it was, just software engineering job, writing code and building software.
Amazing. It's always interesting to know the first starting point, because I've had so many people come on the show that are end up being CEO of a company, but actually their starting point was non-technology or something completely different. So it's always cool to understand, where it all started from. So it started as somebody being kind of technology driven from the beginning, which is fantastic. And then you spent some time at Elite, as we know, kind of working on some of their platforms. What were some of the lessons that you kind of took from that experience that has led into then founding Oddr?
Yeah, I think, we started Oddr about 3.5 years or so ago. There were 2 big chunks of my experiences that really helped me get there, along with my co-founders. One was Elite. That was my first foray into working with law firms. And it's a very exciting space in my mind, honestly, Ben, because, the tremendous opportunities and value that a business can add with law firms is exciting. As I was working through different products within the Elite, and then my next 10 years at Intab, one thing I realized is law firms are very unique in their own ways, and their processes are very unique. So the ecosystem within the legal tech requires that knowledge and expertise to really know how law firms function, how partnerships function. And I think once you have that, it's so exciting to have ways to help law firms really streamline their various parts of businesses. Today, we are focused on, their revenue cycle, but, going back to Elite, it was many different, whether it's BI or their integrations, or during my tenure at Intab, it was risk management, and then, to some extent, the cloud migration. it's just exciting. I mean, this is a vertical um, that that is trying to catch up with so much technology happening. And unfortunately, most horizontal solutions really don't cater to how law firms function. So it's really up to this ecosystem to come up with all these innovative solutions to help law firms streamline all the various aspects of their businesses.
Yeah, it's very true. So, was there a moment in that kind of history where there was that inspiration moment where you were like, there has to be a better way to do this, and that's where the idea from Oddr came from?
Yeah, I think there's no single one I can go back to them, honestly, but I think I have been wanting to do something on my own for a very long time. And I've had dibs and here while doing something full time. But we were at a point where me and my other two co-founders, uh, we had an opportunity. We had a few, to start a company, there are two, three key ingredients, I would say. So one is just kind of having a good sense of the opportunity. And during my Inta, days, we were exposed to some of these challenges just by the nature of us working through different products and conversations. So it kind of caught my eye that, this process, which is so critical to a law firm, seemed largely manual with no visibility and insight. So it definitely kind of planted the seed at that time with me. But then, we were lucky to have some exciting investors who were looking to invest in legal tech. And then I found amazing co-founders who actually quite balance us. So we are very complementary in what we do. I'm from the product and business. As you know, Saurabh is from operationals and product, and Sumit is from technology. So three of us were very complementary, and we were discussing one day, what it would mean to take a leap of faith and do something on our own. And a few months later, we did that, and I'm really excited that we did that. So it's been pretty awesome. But it's generally the conversations, right? That's the art of just when you're talking to anyone at a law firm, it's reading what they're saying, but also what they're implying, that what are their challenges? Where are they spending time today? That really doesn't make sense. And those conversations really helped us kind of get a validation that this is a problem. And we wanted to be the ones helping law firms solve those.
Well, there's a lot of firms that are benefiting from the solution today. So I'm glad you made that leap of faith, and I'm sure that they are too. So that leads us nicely to kind of my first question around Oddr and your focus area, which is, I hear you talk about revenue intelligence, and it would be great just to understand, like, what is revenue intelligence to you, and what does that mean from a law firm perspective?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about, professional services like law firms that we focus on, their primary source of revenue is what invoices go out, right? What are the legal expertise and services provided, invoices go out, and that's the money that comes into the law firm. And for a firm, for any firm that's so dependent upon getting those invoices paid, they really don't have a whole lot of visibility on what's happening on those. And I think this has become increasingly more challenging in the ecosystem and how legal tech and legal technology in general is evolving. 10 years ago, law firms would send invoices. There's no pressure to get paid. Plans could take some time. But now, with all the economy and the conditions that the law firms are, the pressures that they are facing, there's always a drive to kind of get paid faster. And today, if you look at this space, this is very fragmented. You look at a revenue cycle, which means from the time an invoice is finalized to when it is get paid, a law firm could be using anywhere from 3 to 5, even more softwares to manage this life cycle. And it just, it's not efficient. There's so many challenges with these point solutions that solve a small piece of the puzzle. And what we do is kind of give this single glass pane view to law firms to know exactly where their invoices and their revenue is. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the problems? And because we are one system, not just one sliver that we optimize the entire life cycle. And that's when it starts to be really impactful. The two key metrics that we want every firm to kind of track with us is how long are the invoice outstanding for? And then what are the write-offs associated? I mean, we know as an invoice ages, the less likelihood it's going to get paid in full. So how do we bring intelligence to really, for law firms to know where, when they will get paid, what do they need to maximize their AR and revenue, and what's the cost of, let's say shortening your invoice outstanding days by, 2 days or 5 days. It's a staggering number. So, I mean, that's the entire gamut of, in my mind, the revenue cycle. And, obviously there's preceding space over there with the work to cash. But, once an invoice is finalized, the goal that every law firm has is get it out, track it, get paid, and, go to the next invoice. And that's what we really help them streamline.
Absolutely. I remember speaking to one of the Magic Circle firms, and they had told me that the minute that an invoice goes out, every day that it is unpaid, the probability of it being paid in full just reduces every single day, right? And if it doesn't happen within, I think they had done some analysis, and it was something like the first 10 days, if you don't receive payment, then the likelihood of you receiving full payment just continues to diminish.
Yeah. And to your point, law firms came across this very funny acronym. Almost every law firm uses it, which is the GBNF bucket, which is gone but not forgotten. And these are the invoices that just stay out for longer, and then, they don't want to write it off. But yeah, I mean, you look at today's interest and what's the cost of, financing your client's debt. And I think it's not just that, but there's so many things that firms really don't have the tools to streamline. Just knowing nothing should fall through the cracks. These are important invoices. I was talking to an AmLaw 25 firm, and they told me that they just missed sending an invoice worth a couple of $100,000, and now they're in violation of the client policy. They just wrote it off. I'm like, geez, it's crazy. These are low hanging fruits that within, a few billing cycles, firm can streamline and then just have a good grasp of where everything is. So it's exciting times for sure.
Yeah, indeed. So when you kind of like zoom out and you look at that revenue cycle as a whole, so that whole process of billing through collections to payments, where do you see firms struggling the most in that cycle?
I think they're all interrelated then. Genuinely, I feel that. So, I'll give you an example. Let's say I start with collections is a big problem, and everyone's trying to figure out what clients to reach out and where to go. But collections cannot be effective if you don't know what's happening with the invoices or what are your client patterns. So, it's kind of intertwined, but I think the whole exercise boils down to how do we actually maximize the AR, right? Collections and how do we get paid faster? But it's not just the collections part that really streamlines it. Getting the invoices out faster is a key ingredient to getting paid faster, right? If you take 5 days to get the invoice out, you added 5 days to getting paid extra that could have been reduced. So they're all intertwined. And I think it kind of ends with getting the invoice paid. But each of these meaningfully eat up on your high invoice outstanding days and the write-offs. To your question, I would say, collections, but it's not something that only collections can solve. It needs support from the billing and then making it easy for your clients to pay and then reconciling that back into your accounting system automatically. All of these effectively lower, your days it takes to get paid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, when you look at it from a solution perspective, so you've got a technology solution that solves these problems by giving, as you described, like that single pane view of what's happening during the revenue cycle. Um, what about the people aspect of this? So, like, is there a cultural shift that's needed to be able to kind of take that step to really resolving some of those struggles?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there is some change management, yes. And I think it's more of a process refinement, because I genuinely feel, when we started Oddr, we spent about 9 months just talking to many different firms. So, all the years that I'd worked with and the connections I've had, all three of us, we took 9 months to just talk to about 80 different law firms and close to 160 different people. And this 160 people included CFOs, CIOs, Director of Finance and Revenue, billing collection managers, as well as billers and collectors. And one thing that was very clear to us was the shortage of hard work. I mean, all these teams are really working long hours to make that impact on the firm's collections, but they don't have the right tools. And it's more of, two things. One, having the right tool and having the best practices. And this is where, you will see, and I'm sure when you come across this, that some firms have more distributed invoice dispatch. For example, attorneys or legal assistants are sending it, whereas some firms have more centralized. So obviously centralized makes it a lot easier, but having the right tool that supports both of these brings you the visibility. It's not about a small sliver of invoices that you want to optimize. You want to do the entire invoice, whether they are being sent by LEAs or whether it's sent by billing team or by the attorneys. But then you come to the collections people, they are putting in long hours, but they don't have the tool really to know where should they focus. If I'm in collections and I come and I want to, my goal of reaching out to 20 or 30 clients today, what are those 20, 30 clients? Today's tools do not really help them know where they should prioritize, where there's potential problems that can be handled at this stage rather than 3 weeks later when it becomes a crisis. And that's what, the tools like Oddr really provide them, which is, hey, here's a potential problem. This should be a client that you reach out today. Or, hey, this client has typically paid you X days and now it's X plus 10 days. Something's not right here. So all of these insights really help them know where they spend their time. And that allows them to really make an impact. But to your question, the change management comes primarily from willing to use the tools to help you identify problems, right? You and I, and at least I shouldn't say you, but at least I know for a fact that anything that I do and someone asks me to change that, my automatic resistance kicks in. Just a simple tool that, even if I swap X with Y, it could be a challenge. So there is definitely aspects of change management that does impact the firms to some extent, but it's about any other tool. It's not in the scale of bigger things, but we make it as easy as possible. From our perspective, the platform is so modern that we actually had planned for about, I don't know, 15 hours of training sessions with one of our early customers. And within the hour, they said, I think we are good. I think that's the power of modern platform, that you make it easy for firms to use the new software. And that's the change management. I think the results within a few billing cycles talk for themselves, but the team has really the good tools to make an impact in their jobs that they're trying to work so hard all week, all year.
Yeah, no, it sounds like that would be the case. So I wonder if you could maybe break down that journey of how a firm uses Oddr to understand what's happening with an invoice, right? Like if we take that example, maybe you could walk us through like a real world example of like each of the stages of I've clicked the button to send the invoice out. What happens next?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of ways. Yeah, let's walk through that. So once an invoice is finalized in your accounting system, from there, Oddr picks up that invoice, and either you can just schedule it to go out at a particular day or time, or you can send it out on demand, all different methods. But while you're sending it out, there is intelligence that starts to kick in with the platform, just knowing when the invoice will be paid. That's a great example for law firms to know that, hey, based on this client's pattern, that's when an invoice would be paid. Now, once the invoice is sent, today it's like a proverbial black box. There is no visibility for law firms to know what's happening with that invoice. The first time that invoice would pop up, if not paid already, would be a 60-day outstanding AR report. But with our platform, you have more insights into what's happening. Has the email been successfully delivered to the client? Has the client opened the email? Has the client viewed the invoice? Now, imagine a net 30 payment terms invoice then, and it's day 25th, and you go to the Oddr platform and see, hey, this client has not even looked at the invoice. There's no way they're going to pay if they have not even looked at the invoice. Why wait for another 35, 40 days before the 60-day AR report shows that, hey, this invoice is not paid? You can shorten that by having this visibility. And then it's about supporting quick actions and automation. So you can reach out to thousands of those clients that have not looked at the invoice. Let's say the invoice is due in 14 days or 7 days or overdue, and let them know that, hey, maybe they missed the invoice. Here's the invoice again. By the way, the invoice is overdue or due in 7 days. And that's where the power of knowing what's happening starts to kick in, right? Now, once you get to the collection side of things, you want to know, we talk with so many collectors. When they come in, they typically have a morning report they would run. And then there's an Excel, and they're my clients, and I'm going to call them. These are outstanding AR. But it's not just about calling clients from that list. It's also knowing which clients are behaving differently from their typical patterns. So simple things like, hey, this client typically views your invoice in, let's say, 5 to 7 days, and now it's 20 days they have not. Right? Why is that? Maybe the person you're sending the invoice to has left your client's organization. No one's looking at that invoice. Having these kind of intelligence to support really makes every aspect of that process streamlined. You get to the payment side, and we haven't talked about the client's experience. And this is why I always talk about this, because law firms spend inordinate amount of time and money to have the best legal services for their clients. But when it comes to the billing and collection side of things, I genuinely believe they don't have the right tools to provide the same level of service. So what we bring that is elevating your client's experience in all of this. What's a consumer grade experience for a client, right? The age old saying of, if you want someone to pay you, make it darn easy, right? And if you do that, the client sees an invoice. If they have to go into 10 steps to actually pay the invoice, forget it. It's going to get pushed off. But how about making it easy for your clients to pay? Making it easy for your clients to look at the historical invoices and statements and be able to pay. And for them, not getting 500 emails or 50 emails for that matter, but a streamlined communication with one email that lets them access all their invoices. I think these things start to really impact your clients' behavior and their experience with you as a law firm. And, in our everyday, when we go outside of our work, we expect certain things to happen, whether we are on Amazon or someplace else. We are trying to go through this experience of, paying our credit bills or paying bills. It's so much streamlined compared to what today firms are able to offer. And once a payment is made, how do you actually make that easy to reconcile? It should not be a manual, tedious exercise to know, hey, which client paid, what amount they paid for which invoice. All of that should be automated. And the funny thing, and I'm sure you know this, which is invoice to cash is actually a Gartner's Magic Quadrant. And 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago when we started, this invoice to cash term didn't even exist in legal. I clearly remember when we were talking to the firms and we said, hey, we are looking at building an invoice to cash platform for law firms. The first question was, well, what's invoice to cash? Because it's never a product category that's either budgeted or thought about. It's billing, it's collections, it's payments, and it's reconciliation, and it's fragmented. So, that was one of the things that we really felt that everyone outside the legal tech or professional services in general have already using a software that streamlines all of this activity in a single platform. And that's a key ingredient missing for law firms, to have one platform that really does the entire invoice lifecycle or revenue cycle.
Hey John, how do I find out what we've invoiced my client?
How can I view my outstanding WIP?
How do I submit my expenses again?
Do we have next Monday off?
Monday off?
It's exciting to have fresh faces at your law firm, but onboarding them takes a lot of time and a lot of energy when everyone is remote. You're busy enough as it is. Helm 360 has the solution. Just ask Termi, Helm 360's next level chatbot solution for knowledge management. Termi can answer many of your new hires' questions for you without distracting you or anyone else at the firm. This means fewer frantic emails, fewer help desk tickets, more time and more focused productivity for everyone at the firm. Working with Termi, you can have those eager new employees up to speed in a snap. They may never need to ask you a question again. Check out helm360.com/Termi to see Termi in action and find out how it can make onboarding new hires as easy as sending an email.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that detailed response, because I think just the fact that you're focused so much on the client experience is amazing, right? Because you're absolutely right. Like, I think that's the bit that kind of gets forgotten about. And actually making that as easy as possible will make a massive difference to the experience with any kind of professional services organization. So that's really great to hear. Talking of that, like the final stage of payment, what are you doing in that space in terms of trying to make it as easy and as secure as possible for a customer to actually make the payment?
Yeah, so we partner with different payment gateways. We don't have our own payment gateway. We partner with a few, but our goal is always to make sure that two things happen in that payment. One, the client experience is really streamlined. So for example, if I'm using Oddr Pay, I get an invoice, I view it in my mobile, and I click pay. When I click that, all my information is already saved in there. I don't have to put anything. I don't have to put what invoice, which client, which matter, which is really not a great experience for a client. If someone's trying to pay the invoice, you need to make it easy with one click. So with Oddr Pay, what happens is it takes all of this information. It's already pre-populated. You're paying an invoice or you're paying 5 invoices. All of that is pre-populated. Your credit card or your ACH or other information is already saved in the system. You click review and pay and done. It's the consumer grade experience we have when we are actually paying our credit card bills or something else, or utility bills for that matter. But that's the experience that really matters. And from a firm's perspective, the second key point for us is making sense out of this. So when a payment comes, letting them know hey, I'm paid, taking that information and putting it back to your accounting system, and for someone to just validate the amount in the bank and then the amount of the invoices that were paid, all of that is simplified. There are certain nuances also that are very unique that we bring in. For example, if you are accepting payments into different type of retainer accounts, there's a lot of flexibility, what we provide with. So the idea always is with payments, make it easy for your clients, make it easy for your law firm. And, we see a great uptake in making sure that the clients pay.
Fantastic. So on the AI side of things, obviously no conversation these days is without AI. So I think you touched on some of the kind of smart analytics that are kind of baked into the product to help inform decisions around focus areas for collections, for example. Where else does AI play a part in the Oddr platform, and where are you seeing the benefits of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one thing I'll share, which is my philosophy about AI, today, everything is AI. The other day I was at Costco and I saw a toothbrush that's an AI technology. And I'm like, are you really serious? So I think AI has become more of a marketing gimmick than anything else. But to talk about Oddr and our philosophy about AI, I think AI is not a magic wand that you just use and everything starts to function really well. There's a lot of underlying things that have to happen. And it starts by really understanding, each of the individuals who interact with our platform, whether it is the billing attorney or the biller or the collector or, billing collection manager, CFO, and what in their flow within the system can be automated, can be streamlined, and can make it easy for them. So in our platform, there are a million things that the AI makes, but I'll give you a few examples. So we touched upon when did the invoice be paid, right? We've talked about anomalies. Well, one of the newer things we've introduced is, and it came from a live example. So we were in a meeting our uh, with our law firm customer, and they got a request from a partner that said, "Hey, can you tell me what's happening with this client?" And the simple request translates into so much more time spent by the CFO and the team because they have to go through all their invoices, look at the historical payment patterns, what's outstanding, are there any write-offs associated, what's the health of this client? And all of this takes time to analyze. There are hundreds and hundreds of notes that are captured in the collections tool. How do you go through all of that and come up with a small summary that makes sense? So we just introduced in our last release this AI summary capability. And this allows them to click a button that looks at the entire portfolio of what's happening with this client and gives you a quick summary blurb of what's happening with this client. And this, you can imagine, makes it so easy. And once we have this technology in, you can then surface this in many different ways. So a lot of the plumbing is already in our platform, and now we are aggressively, with every release, adding more and more capabilities, whether it is suggesting email with your sentiment captured in there, or being able to modify the sentiment of the client, or whether it is the agentic AI that will make sure that nothing falls through the cracks or takes care of certain things that needs to be done, prompts the billers and collectors to make sure they are following up, makes it easy with generative stuff. That's what AI needs to be. So, we are on this journey. There's a very aggressive roadmap, but what we have today itself adds so much more value to each of the individuals who are actually interacting with the system. And that's the way I look at AI and we look at AI, because, how do you meaningfully make someone's life better and not just, hey, we are AI and we are AI powered. So, but yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. We'll keep sharing, but hopefully that gives you a quick glimpse of where we are in this journey and what's coming down the road as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it sounds very exciting. And then when you kind of think about some of the other challenges that firms face today, particularly in the kind of economy that we're in at the moment, obviously cash being king, one of the things I've learned from speaking to customers is that forecasting what's going to happen from a cash flow perspective can be really challenging, right? And again, like, because of the distributed nature of all of the data that you mentioned before across different systems, can be challenging to bring all that together. So there's a lot of stuff that people do in Excel spreadsheets still, right, to this day. What are you doing in that space to kind of help to get better, and more reliable financial outlooks for firms?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things we do in this team. So one, for example, just looking at the client's pattern and helping them have their short-term roadmap or short-term cash flow analysis. So based on this client patterns and these outstanding invoices, here what's my next 3-4 months of cash flow looks like. And then firms can basically use that and then either go aggressive, follow up, and make sure they get paid on that. But the other one, which is the larger cash flow, we launched the first version of this, and what we do is we look at their historical payments and cash flow coming into the firm, and we look through many different dimensions, including seasonality and client and new clients and clients that leave, and what's the surge when the client pays, what are the triggers for it, the practice and department and geo. So they're like, I don't know how many dimensions across we look through this to really predict what your next 12 months of cash flow looks like. And this really allows the firm to have some grounding in terms of what does my next year look like based on everything else. And this also includes like, hey, how many new clients do they add over a year? What are the typical billings for new clients? How's that client growth going? Are we losing any clients? So there are so many dimensions, but today the tools are so powerful that you can throw a lot of data at it and then fine tune it, working with customers to make that more impactful. And that's the longer term cash flow, the 12-month cycle that we also have. And this is something that we keep evolving. For example, one of the things that you would love to know from as we work with our early customers and we are working with them is how do they refine this further? What is done today? So it's not just the Excel, to your point, the Excel, they predict stuff, but there are a lot of inputs that go into this. For example, hey, how do we factor contingent fees engagements, right? Those are very difficult to add to the predictions because we don't know, a $10 million deal might come in July or might come in December or maybe come the next year. So there's still a lot of work to keep refining this. But the idea over here is looking at historical, going through all these different dimensions, and then making something that really sits and founded in the data that law firms have to give them a perspective of what their next 12 months look like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Better predictability is always a good thing. So that's good to hear.
I wish I had something like that for our business.
I was thinking the same thing. We may have to talk about this. So if I'm a law firm leader listening to this conversation today, and they can kind of connect with some of the challenges that we've talked about with disparate systems and not having that visibility, what's the starting point for them to kind of go on the journey of solving this using a product like Oddr? And I'd kind of I'm really interested to get your opinion in terms of how we measure the success of a rollout of a product like Oddr, because presumably there's things that are actionable that somebody in a firm leader position today could be measuring in terms of some of the measurements that you talked about, to then see what impact happens once they adopt a product like Oddr. But really interested to get your take on how firms should be taking that step forward and how they measure ROI.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Bim, because I think as businesses and law firms are one of the smartest businesses that you will see and meet and work with, we always try to have different dimensions of ROI. So ROI comes from many different aspects, and then we do help them calculate all of these aspects. But for example, hey, what's the cost of automating invoice dispatch? Today, if you look at it, for a typical firm, let's say they're sending 4,000 to 5,000 invoices out. Even if you take 5 to 7 minutes to send an email, that's about 2 FTEs, right? And that's a great ROI. Those 2 people don't need to send that manually out. You can now have that focus on collections or maybe some other projects. But, the ROI starts to show right from elimination of all the manual work that happens in the system. The next bucket of ROI in my mind is the write-offs. So I talked about how you can know on day 25th for a net 30 payment terms invoice, the client has not even viewed it. And you shorten your invoice outstanding days. Now, what's the value of getting paid? Let's say, and let's take a simple couple of $100 million or $300 million dollar law firm revenue, and say if you get paid 5 days or 6 days or 10 days faster, at today's interest rate, it's millions of dollars that they have accessible to. So it's not net new money coming in. It's just coming in faster. But the cost of financing client debt is skyrocketing now with the interest rate. So there's that value of the ROI. Even if you reduce it by 2 or 3 days or 1 day, every day matters because that brings a lot more money within the firm to be used for all these interesting projects and the firm growth. And then the last one over here is just write-offs, right? Fewer invoices end up in your 120 and higher bucket. We all know as they get to the high rating buckets, typically firm will be like, okay, let's discount, let's get paid what we can, and then move on. And if you have fewer invoices ending up in your 90, 91, 121 plus buckets, you have fewer write-offs. So these are just the very simple data-driven ROIs that a firm can look at. Outside of this, there are the intangibles. Like, what's your client's experience in all of this, right? And I'll give you a simple example. Let's say if a client calls today and says, hey, can you send me my last 6 months of invoices or last 3 statements? Now, the simple request from a client can end up taking hours for a firm to respond back, if not longer. And all this while I'm looking at, if I'm a client, I'm saying, how long it takes to send me my invoices, right? What's the client's experience? And then the client gets 3 different emails with, 3 different zip files, because now you are breaking all of that up. It's not a great experience for me as a client. How do you elevate that client experience? Because that's what brings new business in. And happy clients, we all know, means more business. So how do you elevate your client's experience in all of this so they feel and have the same consumer grade experience they have when they are doing anything else or any other business somewhere else? So that's the intangible. But these are, some of the ways that you can very easily measure ROI, but also feel that, hey, happy customer is bringing more business back to us. But yeah, these are all data driven then. So, we have the data, we track it, and we make sure that firms are seeing good jump in this. The last aspect, again, which is the non or the intangible, is just the team, right? Now, everyone is working hard, but having a support system that makes their job easier and increases their productivity, you have happier billers and customers. We all know that today, the billing and collection staff is so difficult to find, because I'm working with so many firms that are struggling to find new billers and collectors. So it's really imperative that you keep these core, people that know your processes happy, and using tools like this really make their job easier. So they have the right support, they have the right tools, and their job is made easier. Doesn't mean they work less. They work equally hard, but they're able to achieve 2x and 3x of what they are doing without the tool. And if they are happy, it means they're not jumping ships and they're not going somewhere else. So, yeah, there are many different dimensions to ROI, but hopefully this gives a little bit of context to what we think an ROI should incorporate.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing the specifics of that, because I think that can be helpful for anyone running these teams as it stands today, and then measuring the success going forward. So really, really pleased you shared that. So that's been really good. It will be really great to just kind of move to some wrap-up questions now. A few fun ones. So the first one that I ask all of my guests is, if you had Doctor Who's time machine and you could go back to yourself at 18 years old, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, that's if I'm 18 years old, start the business sooner. I think I took way too long. It took me a long time to take the leap of faith. I would say, things work out. It's amazing how many people help you, and, with no apparent interest to them. And thanks to all the people who have done this with us, and, where we are in our journey. But I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self that to take the leap of faith way sooner. Don't wait that long.
That's really good advice. Good answer. Although I will say that I think the reason why you've had some of that help along the way is because you are one of the nicest people I've ever met. So that helps the situation. People want to help you, Milan. So that's good.
Thank you for your nice words, Bim, as always.
Yeah. The other one is around, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, so let's just say you did not take that step into legal technology, can you think of a career path that you may have done instead of that?
Does it have to be a real estate?
No, it can be anything.
I would have loved to be a Formula One driver. I've been, that's one of my favorite sports since, as long as I remember, since mid-90s. I'm a very avid Formula One follower, watch every race. I've done that for the last 30 years. I've been to Silverstone. I've actually driven on Silverstone in UK.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of my passions. So again, that's why is it realistic? Probably not. But that was my passion for a long time. And it still is. So in a hypothetical world, I would love to be a Formula One driver, or at least be involved in some capacity with Formula One. There's a whole world of Formula One that moves along with all these races between, through a calendar year. Being involved in any shape or capacity would have been awesome.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer actually, and I can see that being exciting and great that you managed to get to go to Silverstone. Amazing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
brilliant. So, just finally, Milan, what's the best way to reach out and learn more about Oddr for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of ways. So one, obviously reach out to me. I always respond to anyone that has any questions for us. But we also have some information on our website. Submit a request. If you want to just learn more, you're curious what we do, curious to know what impact you could have for your revenue cycle, please reach out. I think you'll be amazed on how we could help. And just learning more about the platform, if nothing, will give you some good ideas that you can track and implement within yourself. We always love to share best practices as we see from all our customers, and happy to always help firms streamline whether they use Oddr or not. But if they do, I'm always hoping they do, and we are part of their journey.
Amazing. I'm sure they will. Milan, thank you very much for today. It's been an inspiring conversation. Really wish you the success going forward, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ben. It was really exciting conversation. You made me relive a lot of my early days as well, so I'm excited. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you on the podcast.
Yeah, no worries. Now I have to go and buy an AI toothbrush.
Tell me if you figure out what that brush does.
Yes. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Legal Helm. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out.